But there is also another element in ethics and peer review, namely the detection of misconduct. And that relates to the aspect that readers want to know that the result of the peer review process is a reliable article. I refer to the same peer review survey of 2009, where people were asked about the purpose of peer review. And they came up with a lot of things. The 5 top bars, which are very obvious. You can read them. But I want to focus on the 2 questions at the bottom. And there we see the question was: is it the purpose of peer review to detect plagiarism and to detect fraud? And what we see is that about 80% of the respondents, 4,000 respondents, so this was really a big survey, they say, yes, it should be the purpose or one of the purposes of peer review that reviewers detect plagiarism and fraud. So this is great, and intuitively this is also right. But what we also see in this same graph is that when we ask the question, are they able, and is this a purpose currently fulfilled, then only or less than 40% says yes. About 38% says, well, it's able to detect plagiarism, so that's only half of the should be able, and detect fraud, it's even less, 33%. But the good or the bad thing is that reviewers are not asked to detect plagiarism, fraud, and other ethics issues. It should be very relieving for you as reviewers to think, well, okay, it is not my task. I am not the detective of science. I'm not the policeman of science. Because ethics in general or in principle remains the responsibility of the authors. It cannot be that if you don't find or detect plagiarism or fraud, that the author is more or less off the hook. That is definitely not the case. But on the other hand, it would be so great if you could detect plagiarism and if you would detect plagiarism or fraud. And fortunately, it happens. Well, I just mentioned fraud and plagiarism. There are more issues that reviewers are not responsible for, but reviewers, it would be nice if reviewers would pick them up. And it is not entirely theoretical that they will pick it up, because the reviewers are generally very well known with the topic. They remember articles they have read on that topic. Sometimes they have even written the articles themselves. They know their own text and writing style and report this to the editors. And when we talk about, where are we talking about ethics issues that you should have a look at, again, even if you are not responsible for this, there are 2 categories: publication misconduct and scientific misconduct. Plagiarism, for instance. Plagiarism means copying text or word or results or ideas from other articles without acknowledging the source. So copying stuff. Everybody knows that there are different forms and severities, whether you copy the method section or whether you copy the results section of another article, whether you copy 5 lines, whether you copy 5 pages, 5 articles or whatever. Everybody understands it, but if there is significant overlap, then the author commit misconduct, and it would be great if you as editors, as reviewers, could pick this up. Duplicate publication is a very serious form of plagiarism. Duplicate submission, that's very difficult for you as a reviewer to pick up. Appropriate acknowledgement of prior research and researchers. Sometimes the quotation marks are missing, sometimes innocent, sometimes on purpose. If that is the case, it would be nice if that could be flagged. Appropriate identification of co-authors is something that is very difficult for you as a reviewer to pick up. And conflict of interest. If you know that an author publishes an article with very positive outcomes for, say, a piece of equipment, and you know that the person is the owner or has a major interest in a certain company producing this equipment, then that needs to be flagged, and it would be nice if you would know. The other category is scientific misconduct. And scientific misconduct has more or less two big categories. One is the fabrication of data. You just make up the research data. In other words, the author did not use a lab bench, but only needed a laptop to write his next article. And the other one, which may seem a little bit less serious, is falsification of data, data manipulation of existing research data by introducing new data, taking out data point just to make the p-value, for instance, to the level of significancy rather than non-significant. And it's our experience that fabrication and falsification data go hand in hand too often. And of course, what should also never be forgotten is the improper use of humans and animals in research. That is a double ethical issue, I would say. And if you spot it and say, well, this is simply not done, this should not be published, this is really weird, it should be flagged to the editor. So a whole list, and again, although you are not responsible for this, it may be good to have a list like this next to you if you perform the review and report back to the editor. Let me give you one example of data manipulation. This is figure manipulation, and this was something that was picked up by a reviewer. So this was one of those reviewers who did more than we actually asked this reviewer to do. What we see here, let me indicate it with a pointer. There was a control experiment and 3 treatment conditions. 3 totally different treatment conditions, and this is the way it was reported in the manuscript. And as you have seen this picture for at least 15 seconds now, you could have picked up what the reviewer picked up, because this is how we got the reviewer report from the reviewer. And the reviewer noticed and said, well, hey, kijk, this is the same as this is the same as this, and this is the same as this, and so on, you know? So this is really weird that these pictures seem to be the same. And then you get a little bit curious, and you think, well, what if I just overlap these fields? You know, what do I get in that case? Well, and then we get this. And then we see that all the treatment conditions were essentially taken from one picture. They just cropped it here. This is a cropped version, this one, and this one. So this was clear figure manipulation, and the only reason why I show this is it's an example, and this example was picked up by a reviewer during the peer review process, and I think this was really an exceptional achievement of a reviewer.